Good evening, Martin Collings here. I've got Laurence Barlow with me, and we're just trying a bit of a different format here tonight with this Fishburners live broadcast. It's a, maybe a prototype broadcast because we're here in the epicentre of the startup world of Sydney. And so I'm here with Laurence Barlow, who I actually saw on this show a few times in earlier episodes. And I found him such a fascinating guest that I said, gee, I want to get this guy back and I want to try and ask him a few questions myself. But Laurence, why don't you tell us a bit about who you are and what you do for people who didn't see the previous episodes where you starred?
Thank you, Martin, for that very complimentary introduction. So I have a debt management company. So we largely are, I'm trying to tune my elevator pitch so we're actually bank robbers.
The good guys, bank robbers for the good guys.
I'm not sure.
Hey,
Robin Hood, exactly. I'm not sure whether that's going to go over too well with the bankers. Anyway, so what we do is we help people get out of debt. And we do that because we identify the National Credit Consumer Protection Act breaches that the credit provider has made during the establishment of the loan, or what we call the cradle, all the way through to the grave. So if you're in a debt collection part of the loan where you've got debt collectors on your tail, we look at what the debt collectors are doing and we'll work out whether they're breaching that. We use all of that information, the breaches they've made, we put it together in your case, it's in the case of the customer, and we use that as a basis of negotiation.
You know, I thought it was interesting when I heard you talk, and we've only met, I think, this week for the first time. But I did.
We have, but cheers anyway.
Cheers. Okay.
It's great to meet you, Martin.
Friday night.
Again, it is Friday night.
So yeah, when I heard you talking about your business, and just tell me the name of the business is
Credit Reboot.
creditreboot.com.au.
That's it. Yeah, very good.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And
should put you on salary.
What I found interesting was you always hear about these people talk about, oh, we'll help you with your debt problems, and typically what they're doing is they want someone who's got a mortgage and they'll just refinance your loans and they'll roll up your credit card debt or your car debt or whatever into your mortgage, and they say they're helping you or whatever.
You can't solve debt with debt.
And when I heard you talking, I thought, gee, this guy, that is a completely different approach to the way I've heard other people doing it. And it's like, you know, I've never been in the situation personally, but I can imagine if I was, you get daunted because the person on the other end who you owe money to, all the power's in their hands, right? So they've got all the knowledge because they're doing it day in, day out, this debt collection role, and you're there, you know, begging for your life effectively to, you know, try and not get bankrupt, and you're trying to, I understand it, flip the tables and say, well, wait, we're going to go head to head with those guys and we're going to try and put the law on your side and go on the offensive rather than the defensive. Is that a fair way to describe it?
It is a very good, once again, maybe I should put you on the payroll. It's a very good description. With a couple of exceptions. One of it is not the person that's doing it. These are institutional rules and regulations that are in legislation, and so banks, finance companies and other credit providers are all governed under a range of laws, and there's a lot of compliance, and it's all very complicated. So the people that collect debts, many of them, including my beautiful partner, are debt collectors that are just doing a really, really good job, right? But so it's not the debt collector themselves, that they're simply doing a job like everyone does.
Of course, but they're representing, but what they've got is, you know, they've got the mechanisms of the law on their side, and they know inside out, or they're told what to do or higher up. And like, I can think about it, like if I think of some cases I've heard in the past, like with, you know, when people have fought, you know, sometimes have mortgages overturned or been kicked out of a house, and they'll claim that the serviceability criteria wasn't properly assessed, or they'll, you know, someone's told them to, you know, treat it as an investment property and was really owner occupied to get around those, you know, requirements, and that's those sort of things. But say with consumer credit, I don't know as much about that. So what are some of the things with consumer credit that, like, do they give credit to people who should never have been given credit, and that's a way to get out of it? Or what sort of things do you look for in that?
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. We go in the premise, we look at the data at the high level. Australians are the second highest level of consumer debt on the planet, which doesn't make any sense because our incomes aren't matching that, right? So we've been, can I say this on show? So they've been oversold cocaine by the banking cocaine sellers. And Australians have got an addiction to debt which is unbridled with the rest of the world. And we can see that, we can see that, I wonder where the camera was. We can see that from the data that we have is just extraordinary. So here's a couple of things that people have got in their head. I can consolidate my debts and somehow that's going to help me. And you can't solve debt with debt. That's just pouring kerosene on the fire, so don't do that. What the premise is that we operate from is that most people have been oversold the amount of credit that they can afford, and that's a responsible lending breach. Now, if we don't take everyone on, okay? We don't take customers on that are just trying to get out of a gambling debt or something like that. We're not like, we have to make sure that we've got a bona fide debt dispute, and we do that through a debt assessment. And then what we do is we get the documents from the bank. The reason why we do that is because the banks will not believe what the consumers got in the form of their documents. They'll go, they'll have their different view. So we get the documents from the bank, and we've learned that is where the bodies are buried. And when we find out where all the bodies are buried, we work out what the breaches are that map back to the complaint that's there, and then we cut a deal.
So I've got a question for you, something I don't fully understand, which I'm not sure if this falls in your remit or not, but buy now, pay later debt. With you're seeing the share prices of all the what used to be the golden sector of the market take a hit recently, but companies like Zip and the like. But with buy now, pay later debt, that's typically a very different type of debt to normal credit card debt. Do you ever get involved in that, or what's your view on that?
It's not regulated, so we can't use any code to deal with that. But we're negotiators, so we will cut a deal. But yeah, like a lot of that stuff is very difficult to handle, I guess, for the people that use that. It's difficult. It's got a lot of, we use the term, there's long grass and there's a lot of barbed wire in it and you can't see where you're going. So at the moment, it's not regulated. If you're trying to manage a aggressive collector on buy now, pay later, it is hard to do. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, so
to Martin, to finish that off, it's actually hard for them to collect as well because they don't have the code to rely on. So they've got to use outside the code collection techniques, and they're all working at trying to keep their boots polished, and so they look like they've got a lot of mud on it. So it's hard for them to collect, as it is equally difficult for us to defend the consumer's position.
And just on that point about hard to collect, like some of those companies, my understanding is, don't do a credit check on you beforehand, and therefore is it possible for them, if you don't pay the debt, for them to put a mark against your credit record? Or that's not an area that you deal in?
Most buy now, pay laters will not touch your credit file. There's and they don't get your credit file. They couldn't give a flying fire truck at a rolling donut. Is that an analogy? Can I use that analogy?
No, it's, well, hey, we're prototyping the show tonight, so we can try whatever we want. If it doesn't work, hey, we try something different next week.
So they won't mark it. Buy now, pay later is not going to mark your file.
All right. Anyway, so I mean, is there anything that maybe, like I was saying before we started tonight, I said, gee, I'd love to get a deep dive. I'd really love to go deep into your business because I think you're doing something fascinating. Does the typical customer come, they're searching on Google and they're searching, how do I get out of debt? Is that where some of your customers come from? Or what's the best way to find customers who you think you can help?
Yeah, no, look, it's a really good question, man. Look, most people think that they can solve the debt problem through more debt consolidation. This is a spectacular, a galactically silly idea, and we have been sold that Kool-Aid, if you ever know that tragic story associated with that cliche.
We're not in Jonestown tonight, isn't it? Is that where it was? Was that it or not? No.
Don't do that stuff. I ever talk to a debt management company, but be careful. Do not get into Part 9s unless you got $5 million. Like, this is my benchmark, right? $5 million, Above, if you've got someone hunting you, good idea to go bankrupt. Below 5 million, any problem below 5 million, there are a myriad of options. We have got a vast amount of people out of, in fact, to share something, we had a beautiful lady who was a client of ours for more, because these things take a while, right? It takes a long time to get into this level of debt, and you can't fix it overnight. And we had this beautiful, I think she's approaching 60 now, and she's a lovely lady, bought a mining town on the back of some sort of property thing that she was involved in, had to sell it, lost money, ended up with $300,000. She's what we call aged out, so it's very difficult to get finance at that age, or restructure and things like that. So $300,000, she thinks she's going to have to go bankrupt. But we looked at the loan.
Everybody settles for cents in the dollar, don't they?
No, well, even better than that. These guys, we looked at the thing, and you can drive a bus through the holes. It was like a biggest piece of Swiss cheese with holes in it that you could put a Kenworth truck through. Anyway, we wrote the whole lot off for her. And it was like winning lottery. You know, $300,000 off your back. You know, you get a different life. You can go out and, you know, live your life again, lose weight, get a suntan, live on a beach under a palm tree. You just got $300,000.
You reminded me of an anecdote there, and forgive me for sort of going off track a bit, but when I asked that question, you replied with, "That's a great question, Martin." You know, once I met this journalist from the Financial Review, and she said to me, "Martin, you know, the one thing I hate the most when I interview people is when they say, 'That's a great question,' because what they're really saying is, that's a softball. That's an easy one. You haven't asked me anything hard, and I've got the exact answer pre-prepared. And when you're a journalist, the Fin Review, you're trying to get that, you know, bit that nobody else has got. And so when she was hearing people say that's a great question, she's thinking, actually, that must mean it wasn't a good question. But anyway, in this case, we're not trying to catch you out. So therefore, I'll take it as a compliment.
It was a great question. We get on average 50 cents in the dollar, and we do dozens and dozens of these every week. So what that means, if you've got a $100,000 problem with your credit cards, you will get, on average, depends on, remember, dead bodies in the bank, things like that. We'll do something like that. In fact, we do a lot better, but I can't say that because banks are going to put out a hit on me or something.
Now, my understanding is Australia moved a few years ago into a positive reporting regime with credit files, and tell me what changed. First of all, explain to people listening or watching what that is, and has that impacted the ability? Has that moved the collection benefit more in favour of the banks, more in favour of the consumers, or it hasn't really changed that aspect?
It is a spectacular example of more just making your life as a consumer more and more and more complicated. They called it positive reporting. I don't know how, I can't even begin to tell you. That is the 180 degrees the other side, right? So what they're doing now is there's this thing called repayment history, or RHI, and this is the biggest thorn in all of Australian consumers. If you don't know about it, in fact, this will affect everyone. If you don't know about this, if you're 14 days overdue on $150, they'll mark your file as in arrears. Now, that will stay with you for 2 years, which means in a lot of cases you will never get the best rate for the 2 years of what you're doing. In fact, in many cases, it's going to lock you out of finance entirely. You won't get finance for an ice cream. So it's very, very, very oppressive. So you need to be more vigilant than you've ever been before about paying your bills on time. People think, okay, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to get a gold star and teacher's pet. Yeah, we're not there yet. You know, they sell it as positive reporting. You can see I'm a bit down on this. Sell it as positive reporting, but in fact, it's actually just another way to stitch up.
Fair enough. Look, I think I feel like I've learned a lot more about your business and a lot more about the opportunity there. And for people who are in trouble with debts, there are clearly ways to negotiate your way out of it. The banks or whoever the financier is will never tell you that. But if you've got somebody on your side who I suppose has a bit of that knowledge can be a powerful thing, and maybe they should talk to you.
Thank you, man. Good suggestion.
So I think the other thing that we were going to talk about a bit tonight, well, first of all, there was a couple of things, right? One was, I saw in the running sheet for tonight's show, there was a question that said about if you had $10,000 to invest in a business that wasn't your own, right? And it got me thinking about, all the other types of businesses here at Fishburners and things you might have seen or ideas that maybe outside of your area of expertise. Have we got time to go into that tonight, or are we running short of time, man?
I think I want to talk about your business first in a bit. Is that okay?
All right. Well, why don't we
I
flip?
thought that was the segue.
Okay.
I'll go, yeah, like
All
I want
right.
to invest in
so
this
I've
one.
done the wrong segue here, but that's all right. Like I say, it's live and learn, and we get better every week. Because my first week on the show, imagine what it'll be like next week if I come back. But they probably won't have me back at this rate. But why don't I hand over to Laurence? And now we change interviewer, interviewee. Let's flip the tables. Over to you, sir.
Hi, Martin. Thanks for coming in tonight. Lovely to have you, and good to see you again. I think what everyone wants to know is what are you doing and how's it working, and share a little bit.
Well, everything starts with a problem and identifying a problem. And to explain what I do, I always say to people, because I think everyone can relate to this problem, contaminated recycling bins. Everybody's experienced that issue where you try to do the right thing, you go to the recycling bin, you look in it, and you see that there's all manner of items in there that shouldn't be in there. It's incredibly contaminated. And you start to wonder to yourself, why do I bother? Is this really going to get recycled, or is it all going to landfill? And so from that premise, I took the view that for years and years we've been doing stuff around education and signage. People have been talking till they're blue in the face, and people keep putting up new posters and whatever, and it still doesn't get the necessary level of compliance. And so in some ways you can think about it, in a perfect world, my business, Charopy, probably shouldn't even exist, because if everybody did the right thing, you wouldn't need technology to solve that problem of recycling bin contamination. But the sad fact is that people don't do the right thing, people don't don't sort of follow the education, they don't look at the signage, and therefore we need something that's more of a technological solution at point of collection to solve that, and that's what Charopy does.
It's interesting because I think most people, after they you walk outside in your jammies early in the morning, and you walk down your driveway, and the grass is cold if you don't have any slippers on, and then you open the bin, chuck shit in the bin, shut the lid, and walk away, and I'm done. I've done my bit, right? But there's a supply chain. There's a thing that makes whatever is in your bin makes it recyclable, right? There are things that go into recyclableness that doesn't work. Maybe you could give us a little bit of an insight on how, when the rubbish comes out of that bin along with 1,000 or millions of others, how do they handle that? How do they work out this particular condom, we can recycle it, or it's got too much of something in it?
Anyway, I'll cut you off right there and give my answer before you finish that one. So look, and you've thrown me a bit there because I lost my train of thought, but I'll keep going. So anyway, I threw you a bit of a curveball with the question about buy now, pay later. You've thrown me a bit of a curveball, and not with the last part of what you said, but actually when you started off, you started talking about walking down your driveway in your pyjamas and...
wait till we get into UIDs.
Okay. So wait, so the thing is that we deal with out of home. So actually, what we do is I'm trying to solve the problem with what I call out of home recycling. At home recycling, unfortunately, that's someone else's problem to solve, okay? So think of when you step out of your front gate and you throw anything into a bin there, into a recycling bin, it becomes my problem. When it's inside your front gate, in your fence, whatever you do with whatever you have there, and I don't want to know about half of it, by the sounds of it, that's someone else's problem, okay? So how do we solve...
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the sector that you service, and how do you deal with those complexities? Because, there's less... I think at a human level, and I don't know if I'm overstating it, but, for me, I want to recycle it. I need the planet to be green. I want this place to be better. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that I put my rubbish in the right bin. But industrially, I'm sure there's a bit of just do what you think, until we get caught. Is that right?
I was walking past, there's a thing called wish cycling. Have you ever heard the term wish cycling?
I confess I have not.
Okay, there we go. So
outside of a casino?
All right, so what wish cycling is, and there was a great example of this. I posted something on social today and someone left a comment saying, that's a great example of wish cycling. So I'm walking past Wynyard Station today and I see there's two bins next to each other. You've got the recycling bin and you've got the general waste bin. And the recycling bin has a sticker that says, no coffee cups. And obviously the red general waste bin doesn't have that sticker on it, okay? Because you can see into the bin, the one that said no coffee cups had 4 coffee cups in the bin. And the red bin had 0 coffee cups in it. And so I started to think, what does the actual no coffee cups sign attract coffee cups or something? But what somebody posted in response to that was, that is a perfect example of wish cycling. People with a coffee cup don't realise that it's not recyclable. Like, let's assume some people don't care, but there'll be some people who think, if I put it into the recycling bin, somebody downstream is going to find a way to recycle that item, regardless of whether it's recyclable or not, because I've put it in there, I feel good about myself, and then somebody down the track, surely somebody cares enough about my coffee cup and they'll find a way to recycle it. So wish cycling's a big problem in Australia because people think they're doing the right thing and they genuinely think they're helping when they're actually making the problem worse.
What are the major, I'm looking at my auspicious wine glass here at the moment, what are some of the major recycling things that you recycle?
Well, look, when you look at I suppose the scheme that we operate in is within each state either has or is in the process of legislating for a container deposit scheme, and that's put a 10-cent deposit on all of the drink containers. So in New South Wales, you consume, as a state, we consume over 4,000 of those single-use drink containers. 4 billion as a state. So that's a lot.
Wow.
That's a lot of previously a lot of those were just being thrown away, litter, end up in waterways, in the ocean, whatever. Correct. More. Yes. So,
I just want to emphasise, I know, I'm sorry, mate, I'm cutting into your thing, right? Most people don't get the difference between a million and a billion. Have I done this before? So if you count from 1 to a million, 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll be counting for 10 days. If you count to a billion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, guess how many days? Just have a pick.
A lot more than I'm probably going to live before I die.
It's not that bad. It's 32 years, right? So 32 years to 1 billion versus a million, which is 10 days. So there's 4 billion is a big, big number. It's a big, big number.
And so, what the beautiful thing about this legislative scheme is that now there's an incentive on those to get recycled. And as the old saying goes, something along the lines of, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome.
Yeah, I like that.
And that applies to almost probably anything in life. You can sit here and wish that things change or hope for the change or talk about change. But when you give people a financial incentive to change, you can pretty much guarantee they get a change. And that's what it's done with that scheme. So it was originally set up to stop litter. But as recycling's become more and more important, the focus has almost shifted away from litter as the primary goal, and now it's all about recycling. And so because you've got these over 4 billion containers a year in New South Wales, that previously a lot of suboptimal outcomes, but now you're getting, probably 80% or more of those coming back into the scheme and being recycled. So in Sydney, most of those would go to a facility in Eastern Creek run by Tom McLeanaway, but there are other places that they go as well around Australia. But when you see the way that those plants work versus, say, a MRF, which might take the yellow commingled bin from the house, which has got a lot more contamination in it, you can't compare the two. The recovery rates are massive, and all of those containers that go through a Charopy bin end up going through that container deposit scheme, and therefore so close to 100% of those will be recycled. So all the PETs bailed up and auctioned off and recycled. All the aluminium, I think you were asking me early on, what's the most valuable? Probably aluminium. If you're throwing aluminium in landfill, this is an absolute no-no because
it's a crime, right?
You save the the energy differences between, say, making something from a recycled can versus getting virgin aluminium and making a brand new can.
Yeah.
You're talking about 20 times more energy needed to create a new one versus recycling.
So what are the, like everyone wants to know, like what are the main things, So I bought a soft drink today in a plastic bottle. Is that, drinking wine here and a thing, is that recyclable or not really?
Look, a lot of this stuff is recyclable, but historically, But historically, we haven't had, because technically, just something may be recyclable, but we might not have the facilities in Australia to recycle it. Okay, so there's two different things here, all right?
Okay.
Well, and this is the problem in the past, which Australia is trying really hard to address now. In the bad old days, there were things that were genuinely recyclable, but they got bailed up and shipped off to China under the promise of recycling, and you're not really sure what happened to them.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Yeah. And so now, especially things like, your PET plastic bottle. So when you buy let's say a Coke bottle, a plastic Coke bottle, PET, historically, even companies, PET is the type of plastic.
What does that stand for?
Oh, now that's testing my science knowledge, I'm afraid.
PET. Plastic has got to be the P.
Polyurethane, something or other, but I'll get that wrong. Maybe somebody can leave that in the comments.
All polymers are plastics, but not all plastics are polymers, right?
Of the hundreds of thousands of viewers of this episode, I'm sure one of you can hopefully leave it in the comments. Thank you very much. So yeah, was that? How are we doing for time, by the way? How are we going for time on this?
Where is your 6:30 meeting?
Actually, don't let me run past 6:30 because I'm on a conference call at 6:30, I think.
Well, I have some more wine to drink, so
how are we doing for time?
We are 6:29.
I think we should wrap it up so I'm not late for my conference call. But what do the two Ronnies used to say? Remember the two Ronnies when they did the sign-off? And they said, he would say, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for all the people that are watching online. I believe we have people from England, Israel, the US.
Okay, my name's Alex. I'm the founder of Trim.
First-hand dramatic impact of climate change.
We will send a read-only copy.
Please jump on here, send us